Almost 2 years ago now, the Ogdebek dynasty deployed onto the world of Delima in the Stripe system in order to combat orcs. By the end of that conflict, the Ogdebek force kidnapped a Space Wolf Terminator sergeant named Richter Stormlance, taking him back to their Tomb World in the Zahirah Sector, where he has been imprisoned since. Recently, the Space Wolves traveled to the Zahirah Sector, conducting a daring rescue mission to save Sergeant Richter. It was a small force, with only a handful of units led by the Great Wolf Logan Grimnar himself, but the Wolves of Fenris were determined to rescue their battle brother. The Space Wolves force was composed of a 5-man Hounds of Morkai Reaver squad, a 3-man Headtaker squad accompanied by their hunting wolves, and a 5-man Wolf Guard Terminator squad led by the chapter master Logan Grimnar. They were to face off against 40 Necron warriors, a 10-machine squad of Immortals, 5 Lich Guard, and the Pharaon of the Ogdebek dynasty, Anathrosis of the Black Star. The battle was hosted by Lord Strife, who played the Space Wolves, and took place on a 4x4 table full of densely packed Necron-themed terrain by Sacris Mundus and Chris Versus, with some Citadel dead trees as scatter terrain as well. The battlefield was divided into 4 sections, each section separated by a force field. The first section was the Space Wolf deployment zone, and the other sections were enemy territory. Each section had an objective somewhere inside of it, and the Space Wolves had to make it to that objective in order to deactivate the force field to the next section, allowing them to move forward. I divided my Necrons into 3 forces and put each force in one of the 3 sections of the battlefield. I intentionally made it so that the Necron units that the Space Wolves would have to face became stronger the closer they got to the last section. For example, the first section was the Space Wolf deployment zone, but the second section had Necron warriors with Goss Flayers. The third section had Necron warriors with Goss Reapers, and the fourth and final section had the Pharaon, the Lich Guard, and the Immortals. In the last section of the battlefield was the pyramid that Sergeant Richter was being imprisoned inside of. Therefore, reaching the last section was the ultimate objective of the game. In the spirit of narrative wargaming, and because there was such an imbalance in the number of models in each army, I summoned the spirit of an old rule from the early editions of the Necrons. Basically, if a Necron unit was reduced to more than half of its number, the rest of the Necrons in that unit would phase out and disappear. Lord Strife agreed to this rule. With both forces deployed, we rolled for initiative. The Space Wolves seized the initiative, and the mission began. Though there was a force field barring the Space Wolves from entering the area, the Hounds of Morkai went to work, infiltrating the pixelated maze and making it to the first beacon, deactivating the foremost force field. This allowed the Headtaker squad, their hunting wolves, and Grimnar's Terminator squad to enter the second section. The Hounds of Morkai popped smoke and stood in the open, purposely drawing fire to themselves as 2 squads of Necron warriors blasted their Goss weapons at them. Not a single casualty was taken from amongst the wolves, though 1 Reaver was wounded. This distraction allowed the other Space Wolf units to be able to advance forward undetected. Wasting no time, the Hounds of Morkai, the Hunting Wolves, and the Headtaker squad would rush into combat with the nearest phalanx of Necron warriors, enduring a hail of Overwatch shots on their way to do so. Within seconds, half of the phalanx of warriors was reduced, and the remaining Necrons vanished from the flurry of blows delivered by the Space Wolves. With drilled precision, the squads then split from each other once more. Scanners indicated that the next objective was on the 3rd level of a Necron building to their left. Necron warriors marched from behind the structure to engage the invading Space Marines. The Headtakers formed a shield wall, their hunting wolves behind them, as they moved to engage the emerging Necrons. As they did so, the Hounds of Morkai Reaver Squad would scale the building from the other side, reaching the objective and deactivating the force field to the next section. Behind this steady advance lumbered the Great Wolf and his Wolf Guard in their Terminator armor. With 2 objectives secured, the next and final objective was very close to the previous one. The Headtaker squad disengaged from the Necron warriors, leaving the Hunting Wolves to keep them at bay as they secured the objective and deactivated the last force field. Unfortunately for them, their saga of wrath would end as 10 Necron immortals and a Royal Warden leveled their Gauss blasters at them and opened fire, causing them to evaporate out of existence in rays of searing green light. Having successfully destroyed the last few Necron warriors in the previous unit, the Hunting Wolves then charged into the Immortals. These Necrons were stronger than the regular warriors, and so the Hunting Wolves were slaughtered by the Immortals as well. The quick destruction of these 2 Space Wolf units left Logan Grimnar and his Wolf Guard Terminator squad in the direct line of fire of the Immortals. Recognizing a priority target, Anathrosis and her Lich Guard used the Veil of Darkness to teleport next to Logan Grimnar and his Terminators, challenging them to combat. The Wolf Guard chose not to overwatch with their weapons, and the 2 groups raced into each other. The Lich Guard strikes were calculated and precise, their blades slicing through ceramite with ease, but they could not match the primal fury of the Sons of Russ, who fought back with power fists and power axes. While his Wolf Guard made short work of the Lich Guard, Logan Grimnar himself delivered several killing blows to the Pharaon Anathrosis, finally dismantling her necrodermis frame and causing her to disintegrate. At the end of this combat, only 1 Wolf Guard was wounded. Seeing the destruction of the Headtakers and the Hunting Wolves, instead of engaging the Immortals as well, the Hounds of Morkai raced past them toward an approaching group of Necron warriors. The Wolf Guard formed a protective circle around the Chapter Master, and in good timing because the Immortals opened fire at them, taking down 2 Terminators in the volley of shots. Logan Grimnar and the surviving Terminators closed the gap in between the 2 forces, firing Overwatch and then charging into assault. At this point in the battle, both the Reavers and the Terminators were in savage close combat with Necron units. Logan Grimnar and his Wolf Guard destroyed more than half of the Immortals, causing the rest of them to phase out. In truth, Logan Grimnar could have entered the pyramid and saved Sergeant Richter in that moment, but there was still enemy to destroy. The Hounds of Morkai were still locked in combat, one by one falling to their combatants. When the last Reaver fell, Logan Grimnar led the charge into the warriors that had slaughtered his battle brothers, destroying them in turn. With no Necrons left on the battlefield, the Great Wolf Logan Grimnar entered the pyramid and released Sergeant Richter Stormlance from his bondage. The sergeant was awed that the chapter master himself would come to rescue him, but that awe locked itself away into discipline as he joined the protective circle around Grimnar, and they all teleported to the battle barge above the Tomb World, making a fighting escape from the Zahirah Sector back to the Stripe system. Okay, so this was such a fun game. Both Lord Strife and I were super excited to continue the narrative that we had made during 2024's October. His Terminator model was returned to him, the Space Wolves successfully rescued their battle brother, and the Chapter Master learned much about the Necron enemy in their Tomb World Cyprium. Even though this battle took place narratively in the Zahirah Sector, it physically took place at Lord Strife's house, which is basically the Strife system. So transporting all the terrain was a trip. I had to transport it all the day before. I took a cab. It was like 2 large boxes and a battle mat. It was definitely a memorable experience. I hope you all enjoyed that battle report. Let us know what you thought about it in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and without anything else to say, Inquisitor Vaughn out. Remember, the Emperor protects and the future is successor.